In 1999, Klaus-Jurgen, a wide-eyed first-time designer, attended his local game group with his debut board game prototype. Inspired by a visit to a fortified city in France, the game was called Carcassonne, and 5 of Klaus-Jurgen's friends had kindly agreed to test the game for him. I'm Adam Porter, a game designer from Wales, and this is a parable for board game designers. The playtest session went well. 3 of the players loved Klaus-Jurgen's prototype, but the 4th, Hilda, wasn't so sure. "It needs to be more strategic," she said. "I like to get the old grey matter working. Give me some more options. I want to make meaningful choices." Klaus-Jurgen had a lot of respect for Hilda. She was the one who had introduced Klaus-Jurgen to the board gaming hobby, and she had the biggest board game collection Klaus-Jurgen had ever seen. She was something of a Kennerin, a connoisseur of games. Her critique stuck in the designer's head. Klaus-Jurgen spent many hours over the following days poring over his prototype, reworking it to satisfy Hilda. He returned to the group the following week with a new version of the game. Carcassonne now featured more scoring opportunities, inns and cathedrals, and Hilda loved it. But another playtester, Otto, wasn't keen. "The game feels bigger, more tiles, more features, but I feel like we're just all doing our own thing. I want more interaction with the other players." Now, our designer was a people pleaser. On week 3, Klaus-Jurgen returned with a new iteration. Carcassonne now featured a princess who could turf knights out of cities, and a dragon who could eat opponents' playing pieces. More interaction and some great opportunities to mess up your opponent's plans. Otto was delighted. He loved to watch his opponents suffer. But Friedrich wasn't so keen. Friedrich was a sensitive guy. He didn't like attacking other players for fear of offending them, and he liked being attacked even less. Take that mechanisms are so 1997, Klaus-Jurgen. It's 1999. There must be other ways to build interaction into a game. Klaus-Jurgen didn't sleep well that night. He wrestled with Friedrich's feedback, and an innovative solution sprung into his mind in the early hours, and he set about creating the first ever cooperative board game for adults. In Mists over Carcassonne, players would work together to fight off ghosts overrunning the medieval town. Week 4 arrived, and our designer was keen to show off his work, but the playtest group were baffled. "You've turned it into a kids' game," Otto proclaimed. "We're not in school now. Nobody plays games to work together." Friedrich bit his tongue. He quite enjoyed the spooky co-op version. Hilda suggested that Klaus-Jurgen research the hot new games from Rainer Knizia: Modern Art, Medici and Ra. Dr. Knizia builds strategic interaction into his games without needing to resort to gimmicks like cooperative play. But in satisfying Friedrich, our designer had disappointed Otto and Hilda. Klaus-Jurgen decided to incorporate a Knizia-style auction into his Carcassonne prototype. Week 5 saw the introduction of bridges and bazaars. When bazaars were added to the map, a selection of tiles were auctioned off to the players, who bid using the only currency in the game: victory points. Otto and Hilda loved it, but another playtester was nonplussed. Manfred's favourite game was another from the current hotness: Warhammer Quest. Manfred was all about theme. "None of this makes any sense," he said. "Castles are dull, and why should I care about sticking boring old farmers onto fields?" Over the following playtests, Klaus-Jurgen tried many themes to satisfy Manfred's whims. In Amazonas, he had players racing boats down the Amazon River. In Gold Rush, players mined for precious metals in the American West. In Safari, players gathered animals and built watering holes. But Manfred was as fickle as the wind. After several weeks of dismissing Klaus-Jurgen's efforts, Manfred explained, "To be honest, mate, I'm not really into board games. I'd rather be watching Star Wars." But Klaus-Jurgen wasn't one to shy away from a challenge. On week 9, our designer presented his playtest group with Carcassonne Star Wars. Cities were replaced with asteroid belts, roads became trading routes, cloisters became planets. Midway through the game, a man leant over from another table. His name was Heinz, and he was a familiar face at the group, though Klaus-Jurgen had never really had much to do with him. "What your game needs is more action. People don't want to spend their leisure time thinking, they just want to have fun." Otto and Hilda rolled their eyes, But Heinz continued undeterred. Instead of placing their little people onto tiles, they should shoot them on with a catapult. Heinz returned to his game of Looping Louis, and Hilda whispered to Klaus-Jurgen, "Ignore him, he doesn't like real games." But Klaus-Jurgen believed any feedback was good feedback, and he dutifully noted down Heinz's suggestion for later consideration. Ilse was the quietest and youngest of the playtest group, and she spoke up for the first time. "I've got to be honest, I loved the original concept, but I can't keep up with all these alterations. You've bolted bits on which don't fit. They might make it more strategic or more thematic, but they don't make it more fun. I preferred it when it was simple." Now, Klaus-Jurgen had a soft spot for Ilse. He wanted to make a version of the game which she would enjoy, so he set about stripping everything back, streamlining the experience and focusing on very simple set collection. Build vegetable patches and stables for your animals, walk down paths to earn bonus points, and on week 10, Carcassonne over hill and dale was a huge hit with Ilse. But Manfred, Hilda and Otto really weren't satisfied. "Klaus-Jurgen, this is a serious step backwards." Our designer was a calm, level-headed man. He wasn't easily shaken. But these playtesters were getting on his wick. Week after week, he went out of his way to deliver the game that they asked for, and week after week, he just got more criticism. He couldn't satisfy everyone at the same time, and he felt like his game would never be good enough. For the first time, Klaus-Jurgen lost his cool. "Enough," he said. "I'm very grateful for all your advice and support, but I don't know whether I'm coming or going here. I'm going to make the game that I want to make." And with that, he walked out. Now, it was still early. Plenty of gaming time left. Manfred shrugged and suggested a round of Magic the Gathering. Hilda wanted to try out the new hotness, Reiner Knizia's Through the Desert. Otto fancied some trading and negotiation, so he opted for Settlers of Catan. And Ilse wandered off to play Menschage dich nicht. Heinz lingered by a nearby table where Wolfgang was testing his prototype game Princes of Florence. "What it really needs," Heinz explained, "is blindfolds." On week 11, Klaus-Jurgen returned to the group with his final iteration. It was Carcassonne, unaltered from week 1. After 10 weeks of robust testing and scrutiny, Klaus-Jurgen had learnt to follow his instinct and returned to his original concept, more confident than ever in its value. Of course, none of this happened, as far as I know, but I can't help but relate Klaus-Jurgen Rader's design processes to those of the designers at my local game design group, pulled from pillar to post by diverse playtester feedback and returning each week with a wildly different iteration of their core concept. Rader has shown us the vast scope of a board game idea, the massive range of possibilities to stretch that concept in one direction or another. There's a Carcassonne for every taste, a buffet of delicious mechanisms and delectable themes. It can be hard for a designer to know which bit of feedback to follow. The playtesters are all so convincing, so experienced and so sure of their opinion. The skill that a designer needs to develop is the ability to stand back and gather feedback, collecting all viewpoints before deciding which path to take. It's rarely a good idea to chuck your prototype out after a single playtest, to rework it so much that it barely resembles your original concept. It's far wiser to record data from each playtest, including any observations and suggestions from your playtesters, and stick with that concept for several tests. If you receive the same feedback over and over again from different groups, that's the time to make changes. Each iteration of Klaus-Jurgen's game was a solid development, and each one of them was somebody's favourite. But the designer should keep their original intent in mind. Why did they start on this process? Are the playtesters' observations helping you to progress towards your goal, or are they taking you further away? Klaus-Jurgen had a clear vision for his game from the outset, an accessible tile-laying game about building a map of fortified medieval cities in France. His playtesters didn't share that vision. They wanted to design their own game, a co-op game, a Star Wars game, a dexterity game, a take-that game. None of this is a problem if you do enough playtests. One person's opinion feels important in the context of a small group, especially if it's coming from someone you respect. But effective playtesting means watching many groups with varying experience and tastes playing your game, and watching their emotional response. Which aspects of the game made them laugh? When are they scratching their heads? At what points do they get tense? Did they ask to play again? Is the experience what you wanted it to be? Receiving playtest feedback is a skill, and one you get better at with experience. Listening and reflecting is vital. Humility is an essential trait, but so is self-belief. There are times where you need to dig your heels in and trust your instincts. The challenge is finding that balance. For more advice about playtesting, follow the link.